All right, welcome to Young Turks. You're on an amazing day. Amazing. Okay.
Amazing.
Okay. So I'm excited today. I think you could tell. I think it's going to be an electrifying day. So I'm excited about the news stories. I'm excited about life. I'm excited about you guys. I'll explain. Trump breaks a bunch of things. He also does some things that are correct that he's not getting any credit for. And I know that seems a stunning sentence to start the Young Turks with, but we talked about it yesterday, 6 different things that I agreed with him on, which is even more stunning. And we got more of that here. And I think, man, the defense industry owns the media. Owns it, lock, stock, and barrel.
Definitely.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about that as well. Before we do any of that, I got to tell you guys, one of the reasons I'm excited is we were planning the specials for you guys next week, and I got all jazzed up. A 3-hour old school. Okay, me, Mankiewicz, I believe Jimmy Dore is going to be in the house for 3 hours, okay? And I think Michael Schur. So I don't know why I'm telling you when it's not fully said, but it's and we talked about the topics, including, get a load of this. I have figured out the mystery to life. Oh, come on. Come on.
All right, so let's get started with the news. Okay, this is part of the show where I start questioning my decision making.
Okay, so that's next Wednesday. We had a wonderful old school last night with me, Ben, and Jesus. And so check that out if you're a member. Check out Hostmates. You know all this stuff. tyt.com/join. We still have the crazy giveaways. So we're giving away a week of Young Turks membership. If you go to tyt.com/holiday, the shop is running this program that I can't get them to stop running. 20% off of everything in the shop. That's shop.tyt.com. You got to use the promo code holidays. We're doing Amplify. I'm throwing it all at you. It's true. You can do a gift, tyt.com/gift. I'm not playing around. Anyway, Amplify. We got one other thing I want to tell you guys about. So sure, you do that and you amplify our message to the media, and but also tyt.com/studio allows you to see what you can name in the studio. Now those are big packages. They go to the media and they get our message out. They help build home progressives. You go on the donor wall, you get the T-shirt, plus you get to name things in here. So we really haven't done that much in this campaign. So that would be great if you guys wanted to participate on that. I know it's big ticket items, but it is fun. And your names are all across this office building in the studio because of previous campaigns. tyt.com/studio, check that out. Let me read some names for you guys from Amplify, and then Anna's gonna get it going. Jenna McInnes from Medford, Oregon. Oh, remember old Medford Tim from like way back in the day on Young Turks. Used to call in all the time on Sirius LR Radio. Anyway, Jenna, $150. You're gonna get an Amplify T-shirt. Love it. Mike Russo from New York. That's such a New York name. Mike Russo. One of my good friends is named Russo. Anyways, Beck Carmen from San Diego, $150. You're getting a T-shirt. Denica Mundell from Richmond, Virginia, $150. You're getting a T-shirt. Everybody, let's go do it. tyt.com/amplify and go.
All right, we have some breaking news. Through Twitter, Donald Trump made it clear that his defense secretary, Jim Mattis, will be retiring at the end of the year. That means that he has resigned. In fact, there have been reports following this breaking news story indicating that he did in fact resign. And it could be because Trump has just announced that he is pulling troops out of Syria, something that Mattis disagreed with Trump on. And now, of course, anonymous sources within the White House are talking to the press about the various moments of tension that Mattis has dealt with when it comes to Trump and his decision making. So, as with anyone else in Trump's administration, no one really has that much influence. The person who has the most influence is Donald Trump. He listens to himself and himself only, and it was clear, especially recently with Mattis. So for instance, Mattis urged him to avoid pulling troops out of Syria, but of course Trump remained defiant on that, and he continues to remain defiant. Also, Mattis says that the counterterrorism mission in Syria is not over yet. Trump's not buying it. He still wants to pull the troops out. Also, it's a story that didn't get much attention because it's kind of boring, but Mattis was actually overruled by Trump when it came to replacing the Joint Chiefs of Staff. So for instance, Jim Mattis wanted General David Goldfein, but instead Trump's like, nah, I'm gonna go with Mark Milley.
Okay.
Whatever. Okay, so Mattis didn't like that. There's more, let me just give you the rest. Mattis also did not want to deploy troops at the US-Mexico border. He saw that as nothing more than a political stunt, which it was, but Trump did it anyway. And finally, Mattis has been very skeptical about negotiations involving North Korea and denuclearization.
Yes, I was for General Vanilli myself, but that's another story. All right, and you're right, Trump, there's only one person who influenced him, it's him, he's under the influence. I'm here all week. Okay, all right, let's get serious. I'm gonna yell something into the TV now, you ready? Okay, this is not normal. People do not run away from an administration at this pace and this regularity. It's crazy. We've gotten used to a million things that are crazy under Donald Trump, but this is an administration that is literally disintegrating, and I don't agree with Mattis. I think Mattis is wrong on this, and I want to make sure that you understand both the policy and the politics of the situation. So let's just do policy for a second. So no, actually, let's discuss what this is. Everybody's calling it a retirement. That is not what happened. One of two things happened. One is he either resigned or he was fired. That you don't just, for anyone who was leaving, some of them amazingly said it before the election, which puts you into a situation that is chaotic and not what you want before an election. That was stunning. Some people said that they were leaving right after the election, like Jeff Sessions. That makes more sense. Normal administrations after a midterm election will have some exits. They will not have exits like this. And Mattis clearly was not planning to do it earlier. This isn't like
he was not.
Yeah, oh well, we were planning to retire for a long time and I had the watch picked out and all that stuff. No, something different now happened. A blow up happened. It's clear. Please report it accurately.
Well, you ask and you shall receive, because now the media, this is just broke, is reporting a statement by Mattis, which is unusual. In fact, Huffington Post reports that in an unusual resignation letter, Mattis wrote that he and Trump had differing views on Russian and Chinese authoritarianism. This is a quote by Mattis: because you have the right to have a Secretary of Defense whose views are better aligned with yours on these and other subjects. I believe it is right for me to step down from my position. Okay, so that leads to two things. One, that just broke. Anna just got that handed to her by producers. One other small part, sorry, Cenk. Defense Secretary Mattis has denied telling staffers that Trump has the understanding of a 5th or 6th grader. So that's another part of this apparently. Yeah, well, it doesn't matter. I'm positive he said that or something akin to that. Of course he does, and he's absolutely right. Which gets to the heart of this issue in a sec. So look, fired or resigned. You know, it's not that important, and this is now a little bit of speculation. It's definitely not retired, right? But my guess is resigned. My guess was resigned before that statement. After the statement, I'm nearly positive it's resigned. So he's basically saying, nah, right? So why is he resigning? For a number of reasons. Anna read you their policy differences. I was gonna say so-called, but it's not so-called. Those are real policy differences between Mattis and Trump. Mattis is right on most of them, but definitely not all of them, including Syria. But that's not why you resign in an abrupt, crazy way like this. And that's not why you put out a statement saying, I don't agree with the president. And especially on China and Russia. Wow, what a statement that is. If Obama's Secretary of Defense stepped down and said, I don't agree with the president on Russia and China, and I have a lot of differences with him and I gotta go. People would be like, what is this? And the Attorney General's gone, and now the Defense Secretary gone, Chief of Staff gone. It is disintegrating. Step back for a second, look at the big picture. Now, on the issue of Syria, it's really important. There's two different angles to this. They're both gigantic, and I come out on different sides on it, okay? So on the issue of whether we should pull out of Syria, I agree with Trump. We should pull out of Syria. Now to see these Democrats all over the television defending
staying in disastrous Middle East wars and hyperventilating about taking out 2,000 troops from Syria when we have 5,000 in Iraq. We have a whole heap, I think 15,000 in Afghanistan. They can still do bombing raids. So all this drama over 2,000. No. They are owned by the defense industry. It's gross.
I have something to add to that. I think that the defense industry and the corrupt influences certainly play a role. But I think that the way Democrats are reacting to pulling out of Syria right now also unfortunately shows that they play political games. And so when Trump decided to use the mother of all bombs, last year, they criticized him for it, for doing so. And I agreed with them for criticizing him for doing so. But all right, so he actually fights back against Assad. He gets the criticism from Democrats, but then he decides to pull the troops out. He gets the criticism from Democrats. Don't be like Republicans. Don't play this ridiculous political game. Do the right thing. In this instance, pulling the troops out of Syria, I believe, is the right thing. Especially given the reasons that you just mentioned right now, that we still have the ability, if let's say ISIS gains ground, we do have the ability to take action from Iraq, which is where we're currently at.
Yeah, so it's not just the Democrats, it's also MSNBC and CNN and Fox News. Fox News has turned on Donald Trump because, you want to talk about a deep state. MSNBC at some point, I don't think they claim it anymore, claim to be progressive, right? They have John Brennan on there. He's out there now talking about how this is a betrayal. We need to stay in Syria forever, right? That's an Obama and Bush guy who, is part of the war machine. And MSNBC trumpets them all. Is there a single person on MSNBC? And I asked this on Twitter. I didn't get a response. It's a real question. Is there one person who is allowed to say withdrawal from Syria is a good idea? That used to be the progressive position. It's still, in my opinion, the progressive position. Syria is complicated, but largely progressives do not want to stay in disastrous Middle Eastern wars. I don't think they're allowed to say it on MSNBC. If we put enough pressure on TYT Army, etc., reaches out, maybe like 3 days from now, one of them might be like, maybe we should leave. But anyway, back to John Brennan about how great the war is, right? So, all right, so that's that. Now, what is Mattis right about in this particular situation? Because obviously the impetus here was the blow up over Syria. They disagreed about at least half a dozen things that Anna listed earlier. Why now as opposed to earlier? Well, that's where Mattis might be right. And his statement there confirms what I was worried about. Look, we told you this yesterday. Trump gets out of Syria super abruptly. I agree with leaving. I don't agree with leaving in like a second flat without checking with your own Defense Department,
the Pentagon.
And I'm not saying you should listen to them, but you got to, hey, how are we going to leave? I'm the president. We're going to leave, but you tell me now how we're going to leave. Check with Congress. Check with our allies. What's going to happen to the Kurds? You should do enormous due diligence on what's going to happen to the Kurds before you make decisions. He made a very rash decision, but was it based on policy? No way. And so that gets to what I'm concerned about. But Anna, did you want to say something?
I do want to say something. So just to add to the point regarding how Trump didn't actually talk to the Defense Department, didn't notify the Pentagon, that's irrelevant because right now, as it stands, we're uncertain as to whether or not Trump has actually officially ordered the withdrawal of troops because all we know is that he put out a tweet. And so there's this huge question mark as to whether or not he's taken, the formal measures necessary to carry out this order.
No, it is very curious that if not the same day in the same exact time period, Trump orders a sudden withdrawal from Syria and his Treasury Department says, we're lifting the sanctions on the largest aluminum company, second largest in the world, the largest out of Russia, and that is run by Oleg Deripaska, who is one of the oligarchs that have sanctions on him, and they have sanctions on that company, and the sanctions have devastated that company, and all of a sudden Donald Trump goes lifting the sanctions and getting out of Syria. And then he lied, of course, he can't help himself, and said, Russia and Iran are upset about this. And then Putin, just to rub it in a little bit, in an interview said, "Niet, we are very satisfied with this decision." Okay, so look, is it possible that Trump is still in communication with the Russians?
Yes,
Absolutely possible. So I can't know for sure, of course, but looking at the things that are public, it at least makes you question that. Is he stupid enough to communicate with the Russians while under investigation? Yes, he's definitely that dumb. And Mattis saying, I'm worried about his relationship with Russia and China. I don't know why he threw China in there. It might be the ZTE deal. It might be 1,000 other deals, right? That he's got with China that we don't know about. But Mattis is waving a giant red flag on that issue. It could be because, he's part of the whole military-industrial complex, but the Russia and China statement is too specific.
Right, and just to piggyback off of the ZTE statement, look, we just essentially convinced the Canadians to detain a Chinese executive over allegations that her telecommunications company or the telecommunication company that she works for had violated sanctions against Iran. Well, ZTE did the same thing, and Trump allegedly did the same thing, and Trump was willing to work out a deal with them. And so it's kind of interesting to see or juxtapose the way he's treating these two different companies.
Yeah, I'll just give you a tiny bit more context. ZTE also has a deal with the Indonesians. The Indonesians have a deal with Trump on naming rights, where they're funneling a giant amount of money to the Trump organization. So I hope prosecutors look at that at some point. If they look at it and they go, oh, it's a legitimate deal where the president is getting millions of dollars every year from Indonesia, which just got a $500 million loan approved by China and another $500 million investment. That is awfully convenient, okay? So that's part of it. And Deripaska, I want to be clear, says he's lowering the amount that he owns of the aluminum company, but he still owns an enormous chunk of it, and he's the guy that was paying Manafort $10 million a year on behalf of what appears to be the Russian government. So these ties are crazy for a president of the United States of America.
So I just want to wrap this up by mentioning that there are those who identify as members of the left who have an issue with the way that Trump is pulling the troops out of Syria. It's not necessarily about his foreign policy and the objective here. It's about the possible influences behind the scenes and what's convincing him to do it. Those criticisms, I think, are legitimate. Yeah. But if you just look at pulling troops out of Syria in a vacuum and you don't think about what's influencing him, I think that it's the right decision, but we should look into why he made that decision.
Yeah, please, if you're on the left, don't be a knucklehead like the right-wingers and look at the world in a black and white way. So it is entirely possible to hold both of those positions. Say, I am enormously skeptical about why Donald Trump is pulling out of Syria. And I think that based on what I just told you, I would rank on the most skeptical end of that spectrum. I believe there's a chance he's still communicating with the Russians and literally taking orders from them. Okay, so no one's more skeptical about why he did it than I am. But at the same time, you could still say, hey, it is a correct decision. Like some folks are criticizing Trump because he might sign the criminal justice reform bill, and they're saying, oh, that would be a win for Trump. Who cares? It's a good bill. We want criminal justice reform.
Exactly.
You have to be able to separate out the politics from the policy. And yes, you can do that. So don't do what the right wing did, where they had Obama derangement syndrome. And if Obama gave them something, they'd be like, oh, I hate it just because Obama gave it to me. No, take your progressive wins, but still question and demand accountability on Trump. Yes, you can do both.
Well, now that we've addressed the left, let's talk about the criticism that Trump is getting on the right on the issue of Syria. Donald Trump remains defiant in his decision to pull US troops out of Syria, but he has been met with quite a bit of criticism from the right, from conservatives who have actually been staunch supporters of his. Now, before we get to the critics, I want to show you a video that Trump released on Twitter showing his rationale for pulling troops out of Syria.
Now we've won. It's time to come back. They're getting ready. You're going to see them soon. These are great American heroes. These are great heroes of the world because they fought for us, but they've killed ISIS, who hurts the world. And we're proud to have done it. And I'll tell you, they're up there looking down on us. And there is nobody happier or more proud of their families to put them in a position where they've done such good for so many people. So our boys, our young women, our men, they're all coming back, and they're coming back now. We won, and that's the way we want it, and that's the way they want it.
Can I just say, I'm sorry, that is just gross, man.
It really is.
Yeah, so I agree with him that we should leave Syria, but he can't help himself. He's got to find a way to screw it up. I thought when he was out there that, hey, they're gonna have a prepared statement because you're not on television, nobody's questioning you. You could say anything you want. Just take a minute to write something down because this is a super important policy decision and that you're springing on everybody out of nowhere, kind of out of nowhere. That's not entirely fair. I'll get to the details in a second, but it was certainly abruptly. And he didn't write it down. No, in the middle, he started saying they're happy and they're proud and of something. And I was like,
he can't help himself. He kind of starts going off track and he starts rambling and saying things that don't really make much sense.
Do a second take, brother. Do a second take. You're not live, right? He just rambles in a way that's totally incoherent. And then he says, oh yeah, they are in favor of this decision. How the hell would you know if they're in favor of the decision? Look, I can't stand it when the right wing uses our soldiers, and certainly ones that have passed away in war as a gimmick. I can't stand it. But I also don't want to say that somehow dead soldiers are on our side. We have no idea whose side they're on. You don't speak for them. And to say that they're on Trump's side, I mean, come on, man. Just have some little bit of decency. And I know it's too hard for you.
Now, following his decision and his defiance to pull troops out of Syria, a number of congressional Republicans have been speaking out. And one of those Republicans is Representative Adam Kinzinger, who's from Illinois. And he made his rounds, he made his media rounds, but we're gonna give you one of the videos where he makes his case for why we should not pull troops out of Syria. Take a look.
That video is very disturbing. I've got to be honest with you. I wear on my wrist a buddy of mine that I flew with in Iraq back in 2008 that was actually killed in 2018 in Operation Inherent Resolve. For the president to point to the sky and say they want this, inferring those that have fallen, the president can't speak for fallen American soldiers. I'm not sure the fallen American soldiers want us to declare victory against a foe we haven't fully defeated yet. That's disappointing.
I will say that Trump's video was very Bush-esque in the mission accomplished message that he's trying to get across. So look, we're not experts on the ground in Syria. So I am skeptical of numbers that are given to us by the Pentagon or by the Defense Department or by the State Department. They give us different numbers. So the Trump administration argues that there are about 2,000 ISIS fighters left in Syria, that we have them cornered and that they're pretty much defeated. Then you hear from the Defense Department and they argue there's 30,000 ISIS fighters in
Syria
and Iraq. Yes. Now they want to inflate the numbers, so I don't really trust them because look, it's a money-making scheme. We all know that. But with that said, I mean, it does feel a little strange to keep hearing this mission accomplished messaging from Trump.
Yeah, so on Kinzinger, I'm also gonna give you context that you're not gonna get anywhere else. He's a Republican from Illinois. The Republicans just lost 40 House seats. He's been all over television over and over again, going, I don't agree with Trump, I don't agree with Trump. That's him basically saying, please don't vote me out next time. Please don't vote me out next time. The rats are beginning to leave the ship.
They are.
Okay.
And I'm gonna give you another example of him leaving the ship. This is where he puts Trump on blast in regard to a recent weapons deal. Take a look.
Turkey doesn't like the Kurds. The president, from what we understand, had a conversation with Mr. Erdogan of Turkey, and then the president immediately said, we're getting out of Syria. What does that mean for the Kurds? I think it means some really bad things. If I'm the Kurds right now, or if I'm any future group that's looking to work with the United States or ally with the United States, I'm gonna point to this and say, see, once again, you didn't keep your word. I fully believe in the power of the president, whether it was Obama or President Trump, to lead foreign policy, but I also believe in the right and responsibility of members of Congress to call out really dumb moves.
Yeah, notice how Congress never calls out dumb moves against war, right? They only call out dumb moves in favor of war. So they keep constantly supporting war, more war. Either the executive branch does it or Congress does it or they both do it. Anyway, on the other hand, I wanna be clear. Again, you can do two things at once. And so I think that the Kurdish position could be precarious. I think we should be extraordinarily careful about that. If we made promises to the Kurds and now we are not delivering on them, first of all, that would be Trump 101. But that is not what America should do. So that doesn't mean that we should stay in Syria forever because we made promises to some fighters that we work with. There is a way that you could actually, if you were a thoughtful person, thread that needle. You could find a way to support those folks without keeping permanent ground troops in Syria. So now the neocons and the defense industry want to stay forever. That's their black and white issue. Trump wants to leave immediately without putting any thought into it. The correct answer is yes, we should definitely leave, but we should be very careful in how we leave, including making sure that we support the Kurds who supported us.
Now, we have another Republican lawmaker who has been harshly criticizing Trump over this move, Senator Lindsey Graham. Again, another staunch Trump supporter, but also a war hawk. So here's what he had to say.
To those who say we have defeated ISIS in Syria, that is an inaccurate statement. They have been hurt, they have been degraded, and I give the president all the credit in the world for changing our policies regarding the fight against ISIS, but I will not buy into the narrative that they have been defeated in Syria, Iraq, and I just got back from Afghanistan, haven't slept in 2 days, really appreciate the chance to go visit our troops and talk to our generals, but they sure as hell ISIS-K is not defeated in Afghanistan. So, to say they're defeated is an overstatement and is fake news.
Oh, but we're not having a conversation about Afghanistan. We're having a conversation about Syria, and he keeps saying that ISIS has not been defeated. Okay, show us the evidence, right? Like these conversations happen all the time, but no one ever shows you evidence.
Yeah, no, I can't stand the neoconservatives like Lindsey Graham. Out of all of the terrible players in this, there are no winners here, right? Lindsey Graham might be the worst in this on this issue. He's a war hawk, never met a war he didn't want to make love to. And Afghanistan, we've been there 17 years. Remember why we went in? Afghanistan doesn't. They did a poll. Over 90% of Afghans had not even heard of 9/11. They have no idea why America's there. No idea. They're like, we fight them because they're here. We fought the Russians because they were here. We fought the Persians when they were here. People keep invading and we keep fighting them. It's been 17 years. First it was the Taliban and Al Qaeda, and now it's ISIS, and later it'll be BISIS, and it'll be something, and then it'll be Al-Qaeda, and they'll just keep inventing stuff so that Lindsey Graham can keep getting campaign contributions from Raytheon and Lockheed Martin and Boeing and all those companies, and they keep making billions and trillions of dollars off of our, by the way, not only our treasury, but our soldiers that keep dying there for no reason.
Exactly. And the criticism goes on and on. Marco Rubio had some harsh words for Trump. Senator Marco Rubio of Florida called it a terrible decision. And outgoing Senate Foreign Relations Committee Chairman Bob Corker called it in many ways even worse than the withdrawal from Iraq by Trump's predecessor.
Yeah, so a lot of these folks, including Lindsey Graham, said that we have to hold the White House accountable. So wait, half a dozen violations of the law. All the people that were national security advisor and campaign manager, et cetera, going to prison or have pled guilty. The list goes on and on. Fake charity, fake university. The emoluments clause. I got literally half a dozen clear felonies that the president. There's excellent evidence that the president has committed, let alone the campaign finance violations, which is 100% certain, right? Should not be held accountable for those.
Well,
Lindsey Graham said, lying about sex, that's not something that's impeachable, even though he was one of the House prosecutors that tried to impeach Clinton for lying about sex, right? But you touch his war machine, he's like, we have to hold him accountable. We have to hold him accountable, okay?
I know, Cenk, but what do Republicans get for holding Trump accountable when he's breaking laws. They don't get anything out of that. In fact, that hurts the Republican Party because they lose power. It all goes back to profits and power. That is the motivating factor, the vast majority of our politicians, and that's the real issue here. So I'm very curious what Lindsey Graham would really think if we didn't have a corrupt political system, if we didn't have money in politics, if weapons and military contractors weren't his top donors. How would he feel about withdrawing our soldiers from Syria?
I guess we'll never know. Probably he wouldn't have been a senator. The people of South Carolina would have picked someone to represent them instead of Lockheed Martin. But instead, in the corrupt system that we have, they get him funnel millions of dollars to Lindsey Graham so he can go and do exactly what he's doing now. How dare you? We will never withdraw from anywhere as long as defense contractors have $1 extra to make.
All right, we got to take a break.
I thought we were going to do Brian Kilmeade. Can we do Kilmeade?
No, we're running out of time. We got other stuff to get to. Sorry. So we're going to take a break, though, and when we come back, we're actually going to hear from Vladimir Putin on this issue because Trump did lie about something, and I think that it's important. So come right back.
We hope you're enjoying this free clip from the Young Turks. If you want to get the whole show and more exclusive content while supporting independent media, become a member at tyt.com/join today. In the meantime, enjoy this free segment. All right, back on the Young Turks. Cenk and Anna with you guys. Someone just gave the Amplify program $150. You'll get a T-shirt. Is anonymous though. We appreciate it any way you slice it. tyt.com/amplify. Let's take part in that program. Get our message out to the media because on a day like today, apparently they need it. There literally is. I asked this question in social media too. No one gave me an answer. It was a literal question. It was a serious question. Is there a single person on television who's saying we should withdraw from Syria? And so far it appears that there's not one person. That is unbelievable. A blockade of progressives. I told you.
I'll give you a little tasty taste of what MSNBC thinks about all this, or at least one show on MSNBC thinks about all this in just a bit.
That's why we're trying to amplify to get our message out there. Also join up. In fact, 99 Rico said, I became a member today to join the front lines with the Young Turks to fight back, to fight for our democracy. Thank you, brother. We appreciate it. Here, we're proudly home of progressives. tyt.com/join is obviously a way to get membership. Also, tyt.com/Cenk. But I am considering stopping saying that because every time I do, it is counterproductive. So yesterday, Anna had built her lead to 80-something, and today, here comes Uygur. No, up to 92.
What?
Jesus. Every day I say it, every day she builds the lead. So I damned if I do, damned if I don't.
I can't wait for a year-end review.
Okay, hold. The only way I can catch her is if enough of you sign up through tyt.com/Cenk and become activist members. Okay, that's the $10 version. That's why I got no love in here, man. Okay.
That's why. You whine more than Claire McCaskill.
Oh, we're gonna get to that.
Talk about later.
Okay. So at least if I've got more activist level member signups, I'll call it a draw. Last comment here. J.M. Fraser says, I think it's also telling that Fox News is willing to run video of Republicans disagreeing with Trump. More rats fleeing the ship. That is absolutely right. Two things. One, in the post game, we're going to show you Brian Kilmeade's clip that we didn't have time for there. That was amazing. And I'm actually going to give you, believe it or not, and I know it's shocking, an actual good Trump quote that I agree with. Also on the issue of war. And guys, next week we're going to have all these wonderful specials for you guys, including old school. There's old school show on Wednesday, but on Friday we got the old school games that we used to play all the time back in the day. In like what would Jesus do? Who's down with J.R. Jackson? You're gonna love those games. So 6 to 11 p.m. Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday of next week. We're all doing it for you guys and for membership. So tyt.com/join. All right, lots of news. Anna, what's next?
All right. Donald Trump's decision to pull US troops out of Syria was a controversial one for Republicans and also some Democrats. But it's interesting to see how in his justifications for pulling these troops out, he felt the need to lie about something. And through doing so, he actually drew more attention to a possible influence behind the scenes in his decision making that could actually be very problematic. So through a tweet, he said the following: Russia, Iran, Syria, and many others are not happy about the US leaving, despite what the fake news says, because now they will have to fight ISIS and others who they hate without us. I am building by far the most powerful military in the world. ISIS hits us, they are doomed. Okay, so he claims, no, Russia's begging for us to remain in Syria. Now, anyone who's been following the proxy wars going on in Syria knows that that's not true, but you know what? Forget what the media has to say about it. We should hear from Vladimir Putin. What does he think about Trump's decision? Well, he just recently had his annual press conference and he was asked about it. Here's what he said.
As for defeating ISIS, I do generally agree with the President of the United States. We've achieved some major advances when it comes to defeating the terrorists, and we have struck major blows on terrorists in Syria. Whether do we need the presence of the American military? I guess we do not need that presence. The presence of your troops is illegitimate, so if you've made this decision, it is the right decision.
No.
So there's more though. Okay, so that was Putin, those are his own words. But following Trump's decision, there were also other statements made by officials in Russia. So for instance, the spokeswoman for the Russian Foreign Ministry said, quote, a milestone story which might evolve from this decision is a real prospect for a political solution.
So Trump says they don't agree with it. The Russians come out and say it's a milestone decision. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
And Putin, as always, rubs it in a little bit because that's what bullies do. And he said, if you notice there, he said, your troops were illegitimate anyway. So look, it's really hard to know, near impossible to know if Trump is still in communication with them and what they have over Trump that makes him do almost anything Putin asks, but this is Putin taking a victory lap. So he did, if you noticed, Anna said that's his annual press conference. He only does it once a year. Mm-hmm. Trump decided to withdraw from Syria and lift some sanctions from giant Russian companies a couple of days before Putin's annual press conference so he could do a victory lap. It could be a coincidence, it really could, or maybe not.
And look, I also want to make sure that everyone's aware that it's not just about Russia. There's another country involved, and that country is Turkey. And so Trump had a call with Erdogan only a few days prior to his decision to pull troops out of Syria. And that's relevant because the United States has just agreed to sell some weapons to Turkey. So there are two countries involved here. They're both involved in the ongoing conflict in Syria, but more importantly, they could have some corrupt factors or corrupt influences on our president. So while the decision, again, to pull the troops out, we believe is the right decision, what influenced him could be a problem.
And look, world politics is complicated. Donald Trump would tell you, nobody knew it was this complicated, as he said about healthcare. So, for example, what we told you during the Jamal Khashoggi situation was Turkey is now feuding with Saudi Arabia, so they were way more likely to throw Saudi Arabia under a bus than they did by releasing the fact that they butchered Jamal Khashoggi. And it looked like there were some exchanges going back and forth on what each side was going to get. What was Saudi Arabia going to get? What was the US going to get? What was Turkey going to get? And at the time we told you it's unclear what Turkey would get if they were to just drop the issue. So we don't know that they've dropped the issue. So it'll be interesting to see, right? But if it turns out, hey, you drop all that talk about Saudi Arabia chopping the journalist up, and maybe we withdraw and leave the Kurds to, to deal with you guys without our backing. Is that possible? Of course it's possible. Do we know for sure it's the case? Of course we don't know. But you have to, these are the things that you have to consider when trying to figure out why Trump made the decision that he did. Here is what is not possible. That he woke up one day and out of the thin blue air was like, this is the time to leave Syria. I'm positive today's the day. To be fair to Trump, and sorry, John Idaho, because he's promised never to be fair to Trump. But to be fair to Trump, look, he has been talking about it for a while. He said, look, I talked about it in the campaign. It's true, he did. And he talked about it in March of this year. And in April of this year, he told the generals, hey, we got to find a way to get out. But this is too abrupt. So if he had said, again, guys, we're getting out, you got to figure out how, and then we're going to do an announcement, you would say, hey, maybe it was a policy issue. This is not strictly about policy. There is some other game that is being played here, either Russia and or Turkey pulling the strings.
One final thing that I want to mention, Trump felt the need to also bring up Iran in his tweet, saying that Iran is not happy that US troops are being pulled from Syria, which makes no sense, because part of the reason why we were in Syria in the first place was we were part of this proxy war. We were worried about the influence that Iran would have in a country like Syria. In fact, that's supposedly the main reason why we're helping the Saudi-led coalition in Yemen, because, that's also a proxy war. Iran is involved, and we want to make sure we stop the influence of Iran in Yemen. So Trump isn't even really consistent in his own foreign policy goals. Like, this decision doesn't really make sense for Trump. Like, it goes against everything that he claims he wants to do, which is why I think, being skeptical about his reasoning, I think, makes sense.
Yeah, and look, Trump, to be fair, he's all over the board. So sometimes he'll say, it's a mess in the Middle East. We're not winning in the Middle East, we got to leave, right? He said that a lot during the campaign. And then he'll turn around and go, we have the best generals and the best wars, and we're beating ISIS so badly, it's so great. And we got to beat Iran, that's why we have to stay in Syria. And then the next day he'll turn around and go, we got to leave right now. So, but I'm going to reemphasize, even if it's for the benefit of Russia or Turkey, it doesn't mean that it's the wrong decision for the country. Remove the politics, which is a separate issue, from the policy. So if Russia, for example, wants us to have Medicare for all, I don't care that Russia wants it. I still want Medicare for all, and I'll go, okay, great. If Putin somehow pulled the strings with Trump and got him to say yes to Medicare for all, I would think that was a massive victory for us. So yes, you should care about Trump's motivations, because what else is he going to do on behalf of another country? But you should also support a policy decision that makes sense if you think it is the correct one. By the way, warmongers like John Brennan out there going, he is surrendering America's role on the world stage. No, withdrawing 2,000 troops from Syria is not surrendering our role on the world stage. It's only surrendering a little extra profit for defense contractors that hire people like John Brennan and General Jack Keane, who, by the way, is all over television, and everybody's quoting him like, oh, that's a former general. He works at a think tank, which is a neoconservative think tank. I don't know who they're funded by, but I would be shocked if some of that money wasn't from defense contractors. So the corruption on television is unreal. Brennan is not on Fox News, he's not on CNN, he's on MSNBC, okay?
Yep. So we're going too long, but I do have a clip from MSNBC that I want to show you. So MSNBC's been covering this, wall-to-wall coverage on Trump's decision to pull troops out of Syria. And there was an exchange on Morning Joe that I found fascinating and I wanted to share with you all, so let's take a quick look at that.
Russian President Vladimir Putin at his year-end press conference was asked about President Trump's decision to pull out of Syria. He said, quote, as for defeating ISIS, I agree with the President of the United States that they've been defeated, and he calls the withdrawal of the United States the, quote, correct decision. That's from Vladimir Putin talking about Donald Trump.
So our intel community disagrees with Putin when it comes to interference in the elections. And our entire foreign policy apparatus in the United States of America across the West disagrees with Trump on this. But once again, he's on Vladimir Putin's side.
Vladimir Putin
alone
stood there at the press conference smiling. He got exactly what he wanted, and President Erdogan of Turkey got exactly what he wanted as well. The Kurds now exposed to the Turks.
My father would be so disgusted.
It's great commentary, good analysis.
My father, for the record, doesn't like Putin either. No, her father, by the way, was, of course, a top foreign policy advisor to previous presidents. Still a curious statement. Look, Morning Joe, to their credit, in a sense, and also to their discredit, is the epicenter of mainstream media conventional wisdom thought. And yes, they've been very tough on Trump, and in a way that is sometimes cathartic and good to see on television, okay? I always give the devil their due, okay? That is because the establishment does not like Donald Trump. And so Morning Joe's George Scarborough's a Republican, has been conservative, even considered running for office again, maybe even for president. He was a former Republican congressman. He does not agree with any progressive positions, Medicare for all, et cetera. He despises all those positions. But the establishment was not pro-Trump, so they've been anti-Trump. But once you touch the issue of war, no. MSNBC will stay on message, pro-war all the way.
We need to take a break. When we come back, we are going to talk about what Trump's tax cuts have amounted to for the middle class and working class a year after they were enacted, and what Republicans are now planning to do to increase revenue following major losses by this tax bill.